The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Big 12 football never disappoints. It's always a weekly expect the unexpected. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you. We can't waste any time. We've got to dive in to all the headlines that made waves in week 4.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shaped this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
Started off here from the University of Utah headline desk here. Yeah, they get the win 22-19 at Oklahoma State. That's great on paper, but Cam Rising, another late scratch. The finger, man, I'll tell you what, it's the ring finger that just won't get better, or they didn't feel great about it. Either way, Isaac Wilson gets his second start in a row, Mitch, and they roll. When I say they roll, it was a 3-point win. Oklahoma State got a couple of big scores at the end there, but man, you just wonder what's going on. The Cam Rising part of this is just as big of a headline. The question mark of what his future is going to look like this season is wild for the Utes. And I know that they have a lot of trust of Isaac Wilson, but they know that Cam Rising is a better quarterback right now.
Oklahoma State on the losing end of that big showdown in the Big 12. Ollie Gordon held to 42 rushing yards, and Alan Bowman was benched during the game. He re-entered late. He scored those couple touchdowns, but Oklahoma State, that quarterback situation, it's going to be very interesting to watch how Mike Gundy proceeds going forward.
Yeah, Mike Gundy, in our Sound Roundup, I'm sure he's going to be very humble and just give all the praise to Utah. Probably not, actually. BYU. One of the craziest 3-minute stretches you'll ever see in college football. The scoop and score at the end of the half. Turn it around for another turnover that turns into a touchdown again late. The 17-6 halftime score, Mitch, that we thought was going to be 6-0 or 6-3. It was wild, and then it got even more crazy in the second half because Kansas State ended up just imploding. That was part of the storyline as well. Avery Johnson looked very human. As soon as things got a little bit dicey and they got behind, he didn't have what it takes to bring that team back, and suddenly Kansas State looked very beatable, and that's exactly what BYU did.
That's right. In headline 4, Kansas State, they folded to that sellout crowd at LaVell Edwards Stadium. You saw some illegal formation, some false starts, and that's not typical for a Chris Kleiman team. This was probably the worst loss a Chris Kleiman coach Kansas State team has suffered since that COVID year in 2020. They did not look good at all. They didn't look anything like a Big 12 championship team that we've grown accustomed to with the Wildcats from 2 years ago. So they've got to get kind of back to the drawing board and bounce back, but you got to give credit to BYU for stepping up and capitalizing on those momentum-changing plays.
Mitch, I thought I saw all the Colorado Hail Marys in my youth that I thought I could take with the replays of Cordell Stewart in my lifetime. But
almost
you know
30 years to the day, too.
It's bonkers, man. Colorado, you thought this thing was over with. They were losing most of this game, including right up to the very end. A Hail Mary to LeJontay Wester, not Travis Hunter. They get a 44-yard touchdown as time expired. Zeros on the clock, and then, of course, in that overtime, yes, Travis Hunter does get a touchdown, and Colorado gets the win over Baylor, who thought they had that thing wrapped up, Mitch.
They did, and they were Baylor in overtime, down 38-31. They fumbled the ball as they're running into the end zone to tie it up, and game over. Buffs get the win. Huge win for Colorado, and it makes you wonder, Alex, is Dave Aranda's seat, is it scorching hot now on the banks of the Brazos? Because it's not looking good for the Baylor Bears at the moment.
It does not make me wonder. It is absolutely a disaster for Dave Aranda. Those are the types of losses when you've got it in the bag and you can't convert. Man, that's a tough one. And it made Colorado look better than they are, which is like the story of a lot of the last 2 years. But we'll see. They're 3-1 right now. I'd love to see where they're going to end up in those power rankings. Texas Tech gets the big W. Cam Scatabo, 60 yards rushing. He was one of the better running backs in all of Big 12 for Arizona State. But the Sun Devils get their first loss of the season. And Kenny Dillingham and his guys, they're 3-1. They're still looking pretty good, but Texas Tech is starting to turn things around, Mitch.
They are, and they've capitalized on a pair of back-to-back home games and big win for Texas Tech to give you proof that their offense is in a good place with Baron Morton at quarterback, a offense that's struggling mightily. Another fourth-quarter collapse for Kansas after a long weather delay in West Virginia. Jalen Daniels fumbled the ball with a chance at another comeback. Jayhawks dropped their third consecutive game, and they are reeling at the moment.
Makes you wonder if they're wondering about that hire of Jeff Grimes at the offensive coordinator position. Okay, again, if you had BYU at 4-0 and Kansas at 1-3 after week 4, you're a liar. So there you go. Again, another tip of the cap to the wildness of what this conference is. Speaking of wildness, West Virginia's Garrett Green gets a touchdown drive with 38 seconds left. West Virginia, he's the one who gets that win over Kansas. We were wondering about it last week. We were like, I bet West Virginia wins that game. And Kansas is in a real bad spot, and West Virginia rebounds on the flip side.
Iowa State quietly finishes up their out-of-conference schedule with a blowout over Arkansas State. The Cyclones, they are trending up. Might be a little bit of a tease, but they are near the top in these power rankings. They're playing great football right now.
Yeah, Matt Campbell's a great coach, and they're going to get into conference play. And I think a lot of the other teams, you start looking around, all the inconsistency, you wonder if that's going to be a team who's going to stay consistent. TCU, I have no idea what to think. SMU scored 66 points on TCU. TCU scores 42 of their own. You score 42 points but then still lose by 24, Mitch. This is the Big 12. It's exactly the kind of weekend. I don't know when it's going to stop, man. This keeps happening. 66-42. SMU could only put up 15 against BYU a couple of weeks ago.
And SMU, 3 of their touchdowns were not from the offense. So defense, special teams, kind of like what BYU did against Kansas State. Not a good look for TCU at all. Not a good start for Andy Avalos, the new defensive coordinator who came over from Boise State. I mean, I don't want to, you know me, Alex. I'm always willing to ratchet up the heat on a seat. But
you'll fire anybody from that spot. Yeah.
Is Sonny Dykes? Is that thing warming up?
Oh my gosh!
I mean, you start to lose the crosstown battle now against SMU, the school you left, and now they're in the Power 4.
Yep.
That's not a good look for TCU.
Well, that's a win. That's a win you're supposed to just almost automatically chalk up if you're TCU, especially over the past decade. But, yeah, that's a weird one. And when you get thrown out of the game for 2 unsportsmanlike conducts, that shows that you don't have your stuff together. Speaking of not having your stuff together, Houston is awful. And and it continues. Cincinnati, they're looking okay at 3-1 and shutting out Houston 34-0. An awful showing by the Cougs, Mitch. It's just things keep getting worse down there in Houston.
It really does, but congrats to Cincy. First Big 12 home win since they joined the league last year. And that's your Big 12 headlines for Week 4. It's always brought to you by Macy's. We're taking the break. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you. We're going to be here till noon. And next, we got the Big 12 Sound Roundup. We'll hear from Coach Gundy, Coach Dykes, and maybe some Coach Prime as well. So Big 12 Sound Roundup next here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.